Hello everybody, in today's video we are going to take a look at the 2015 Standard Level Biology final exam paper. The first exercise is about the damage done by the line grass trimmer. An important job in garden maintenance work is to take care of grass surfaces. A frequently seen damage done while carelessly carrying out lawn care jobs with no regard to the planted trees and bushes is when the bark of the tree is ripped off by the rotating part of the line grass trimmer. It causes the nutrients to accumulate and the part of the trunk above the damaged side to thicken and thereby the lifespan of the tree shortened. If the trimmer line cuts deep into the trunk, a wound is formed, which can be a site of infection. The first question: name the parts indicated by the letters in the cross-sectional view of the woody stem. So we can see here a woody stem and the parts are clearly indicated. So the first thing you need to name is this lateral meristem in here, which is called the cambium. B is indicating clearly the xylem, which is responsible for water transport. C is showing us the phloem, which is doing translocation, transportation of organic substances. D is actually the bark. What is the function of the cells in the layer marked A? So the cambium cells are responsible for making the tree trunk wider. So it is responsible for the growth in girth. Don't forget, that's the lateral meristem. The layer C is also damaged by the line grass trimmer, namely the phloem. The solution of which substances is transported in this part of the woody stem? Write the letters of the correct answers in the boxes. So out of these options, you should pick those that are being transported in the phloem. We know that organic substances are transported there from the sources to the sinks, and actually that is not. Cellulose is the material of the plant cell wall. Amino acids are transported and sugars are transported. Insulin is a hormone produced by the beta cells of the pancreas. It's a protein hormone. So the good answers are C and D. The damage causes the nutrients to accumulate according to the text. From which organ to which organ of the plant are the accumulating nutrients the author talks about transported? So you have already seen that from which organ, obviously the leaves must be mentioned in here. That's quite straightforward. To which organ? Here you have more options. I just wrote roots, but according to the key as well, the fruits and the flowers would also be accepted. Alright, so that's it for the first exercise. Let's move on to the second one. Spring pollinators. An island day gecko is licking the flower nectar of a tree in Mauritius. The excerpt below describes a variety of ways in which flowering plants are pollinated. Insects started their beneficial activities 130 million years ago when flowering plants appeared. Flies and beetles were the first pollinators. As for bees, at present 20,000 bee species are registered all over the world, 1/5 of which can be found in the United States as well. Besides six-legged ants, butterflies, wasps, and snails with mantle cavity crawling over the flowers, hummingbirds with their long beaks also take their fair share of pollination. Viviparous bats with strange-looking noses and tongues happily indulging in nectar also ensure the fertilization of hundreds of plants. Non-flying mammals also make their contributions. The sugar-loving opossums, lemurs of Madagascar, and the countless rainforest monkeys just love tearing flowers apart and eating up their contents while having a lot of pollen stuck to their fur, of course. There are also some lizards, such as the geckos and skinks, which also like licking nectar and pollen, and they carry the pollen grain stuck to their faces and legs along to the next flower. Give one example of each group of animals taking part in pollination based on the excerpt. There are many possible answers that can be accepted in here. From the text, you can actually figure out the answers. So for the insect, I just write flies. Then for the reptile, obviously the lizard is mentioned. Also you can write geckos and skinks. For the bird, hummingbird can be given. And for the mammals, I just wrote here bat, but also lemur, opossum, monkeys, all of these would be accepted. Which of the animals mentioned in the excerpt cannot be put into any of these groups? Now if we go back to the text, we can see the animals listed in this part, and snails are the ones which are actually mollusks, so snails don't fit into any of the categories. So that's the answer. Name at least one bodily feature assisting pollination that the animals mentioned in the excerpt have in common. Alright, so this is again something that can be answered from the text. For example, viviparous bats with strange-looking noses and tongues, happily indulging in nectar, also ensure the fertilization of hundreds of plants. So basically, the unusual or the unique nose and tongue can help animals to detect the location of the pollen. So pollination is aided by the unusual tongues and noses. What is the biological gain of this behavior for the pollinating animals? Basically, they can gain many things. For example, the nutrients of nectar or the sugar from the nectar, but the pollen grains also contain several substances. One thing is needed in here, so I just wrote the nutrients of nectar. According to the excerpt, pollination appeared at the same time as flowers. Which currently existing groups of plants have flowers? Flowering plants, gymnosperms and angiosperms must be named here. There is another evolutionary advancement which also appeared in the plant groups having flowers. What is this advancement and what is the advantage of this appearance? The name of the organ is the fruit. I also added seed as the key is indicating, and its advantage, the reproduction is much more efficient, but obviously other advantageous features can be written in here. Alright, in the next exercise we are going to talk about hormones, regulatory substances in our body. Endocrine system is one of my favorite topics. So, 3 hormones of the human body are shown in the diagram. Write the numbers of the following statements in the appropriate sections of the Venn diagram. So, you need to remember everything you have learned about these hormones, where are they made, how do they work, and I hope these pictures that I added here will help you to bring back the old memories about every single one of them. So thyroxine is produced by the thyroid gland, and actually it's an amino acid derivative with iodine in it, and it's responsible for regulating the metabolic rate of our cells. Adrenaline, we often call it as a fight or flight hormone, which is produced in case of a sudden stressful situation. When the sympathetic nervous system is activated, actually the adrenal medulla is responsible for producing adrenaline. And then insulin is produced by the pancreas, the beta cells of the pancreas, the endocrine function. So the beta cells of the pancreas are responsible for producing this hormone, which is very important because it helps us to lower the blood sugar level. Okay, so let's look at the statement. It is produced by the gland located in the curvature of the duodenum. We know that insulin, which is produced by the pancreas, is actually located there. So number 1 comes here. It has an effect on carbohydrate metabolism, all of them. Its site of production is found at the thyroid cartilage of the larynx. Easy one, that's going to be the thyroxine, which is produced by the thyroid gland. It causes the glycogen in the liver and muscle to break down into glucose. That's going to be adrenaline. Okay, it reduces the blood glucose level. We have discussed that comes here. It's insulin. It assists the breakdown processes within the cells. Now, adrenaline definitely, and thyroxine as well. So number 6 will belong to this part. It increases the utilization of glucose in the blood and the storage of fats in the cells. So that's gonna be insulin again. It increases the basic metabolic rate and the oxygen consumption of the cells. We have discussed that's thyroxine. After getting into the capillaries, it is carried to its destination by the blood. All of them, hormones are transported by our blood. It is a fast-acting hormone produced in the adrenal medulla. That's gonna be adrenaline. All right. Exercise 4. Is lactose dangerous? On a healthcare homepage, you can read the following information about the disease called galactosemia. Lactose is a disaccharide occurring only in milk and consisting of 1 molecule of glucose and 1 molecule of galactose. Lactose is broken down into glucose and galactose during digestion in the small intestine, and it is absorbed in this form. The body can only use galactose as an energy source if it is converted to glucose by enzymes. Due to the lack of enzymes needed for the conversion, the galactose and its metabolic products building up in the blood have a poisonous effect on the liver and kidneys, and by damaging the eye lens, they cause cataract. The parents of a galactosemic child do not usually suffer from galactosemia. The rate of occurrence of the disease is the same in girls and boys. What is the pattern of the inheritance for galactosemia? Write the correct letters into the boxes. So we can use the help of the text again, and it is explaining that the trait is inherited in a dominant recessive manner, and it's linked to autosomal chromosomes, so C and F are the good answers. We know that X-linked recessive traits are present more frequently in males, as they have only one X chromosome, and it is clearly stated in here that the occurrence of the disease is the same in the case of the girls and the boys. The inheritance of galactosemia is based on two alleles of a single gene. What are the genotypes of the parents with healthy phenotypes who have a child suffering from galactosemia? All right, so we concluded in the previous exercise that galactosemia is inherited in an autosomal recessive manner. And if it does so, the parents must be carriers, so they don't show the disease, the symptoms of the disease, but they carry the recessive allele. Therefore, the good answer is this heterozygous in here, so B comes to the box. Okay, what is the genotype of the child suffering from galactosemia? As it is a recessive trait, then homozygous recessive, so D is the good answer. What might be the genotype of the other parent with regard to the gene responsible for the conversion of galactose if the galactosemic parent has a healthy child? So if one parent is diseased, the other parent must be either homozygous dominant or heterozygous. So that's the answer. If the symptoms of the disease are discovered in a child, what solution would you recommend to prevent the damages described? Follow a lactose-free diet. That can be a good solution. Which piece of information in the excerpt helps us to rule out the possibility that the inheritance of the disease is linked to the X chromosome? The last statement is telling us the rate of occurrence of the disease is the same in girls and boys. All right. Exercise 5, fungi in our everyday life. Fungi comprise a group of living organisms which is distinctly different from plants and animals concerning both their morphology and way of life. Fill the gaps of the following text with one suitable word from the list below. Not all the words are needed. In rainy years, the mushrooms with thalloid body provide us with healthy food. Most fungi reproduce by spores. The brown-gilled field champignons are often mistaken for the white-gilled deathcap, responsible for a considerable proportion of food poisoning deaths in Hungary. Next statement, you need to name a unicellular fungus, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, namely the baker's yeast. The baker's yeast is a unicellular fungus that is used to make bread dough. The bread covered with black bread mold is not suitable for eating anymore. Bracket fungi belonging to the group of wood decay fungi can often be seen on decaying trees in the forest. In the next one, you need to highlight a symbiotic relationship. So lichens, which represent a form of symbiosis, including mosses, often appear on the north sides of trees and rocks. Apart from helping us to determine the cardinal directions, a lot of their species are suitable indicators of air pollution. High levels of sulfur dioxide in the air destroy these species. In warm and rainy summers, a considerable part of the grape yield might be destroyed by downy mildew. The spread of fungi living in different parts of our body during the time of an illness often indicates the weakness of the immune system. However, antibiotics produced by the penicillium provide substantial help in fighting off bacteria causing disease. Exercise 6. Danger of epidemic. In a few settlements of the Hungarian plains, some people contracted anthrax in the summer of 2014. These rot-shaped bacteria attack domestic animals and can spread from the infected meat to humans. As it was observed by Robert Koch, the bacteria can survive extreme conditions in the form of spores and start dividing when they get enough water. Similarly, in the year 2014, the Ebola virus took a heavy toll on human life. The hemophilia caused by the virus is lethal in most of the cases. Its first appearance was thought to have been caused by humans consuming dead animals like bats. The infection is spread through body fluids and can be influenced by human cultural customs as well. Compare the two types of disease-causing organisms. Write the appropriate letter into the box next to each statement. It reproduces by fission. We know that bacterial cells can reproduce by binary fission, asexually, so that's going to be true for the anthrax bacterium. The effect of the blood platelets is strongly influenced by it according to the excerpt. It is written down hemophilia caused by the virus, so that's going to be true for the Ebola. Its genetic material is nucleic acid. That's true for both, so C. Its spores are produced by reduction cell division. Neither of them. Hygiene plays an important role in the prevention of its infection. That's true for both. It can only reproduce in living cells. We know that viruses are absolute parasites, so that's true for the Ebola virus. Its dissemination is achieved by animals as well. It is written down clearly in the text that is true for both. It is surrounded by a protein capsule. That's true for the virus, Ebola virus. Its cytoplasm is surrounded by a membrane. That's going to be true for the anthrax bacterium, so A. In its cell nucleus, toxins are produced. None of them. It is a unicellular organism. That is the bacterium, so A. What precautionary measures would you suggest in Ebola-stricken countries? Bodily contact should be avoided with the infected people. Exercise 7. The role of the excretory organ in maintaining homeostasis. The sketch diagram shows the most important parts of the human excretory system. Write the appropriate letters of the diagram into the boxes next to the statements. So we can see here a diagram, and a few parts are labeled in here, namely the urinary bladder, the ureter, the pelvis, the medulla, and the cortex. Okay, let's look at the statements. It is a flexible organ adapted to storing urine. That's an easy statement, so urinary bladder is responsible for doing this. The final concentration of the urine is completed here. That's going to be the medulla, namely B. The origin of ureter, where kidney stones might form, we discussed that's the ureter, so C will be the good answer. The main site of filtrate formation, that is the renal cortex, so this region A. Don't forget what we have learned about nephrons. Urine is moved in it by peristaltic movement, so we know that the ureter moves the urine towards the urinary bladder by peristalsis, so D is the good answer. Other organ systems also play a role in excretion. Name 2 organ systems, taking part in the excretion of water in the human body. When we covered the excretory system, actually, we were talking about this question, and we discussed that excretion involves many systems of our body. And as far as I remember, we said a few sentences about the liver and the lungs and the skin. Out of these 3 organs, actually the lungs are the ones that are eliminating some water, plus of course carbon dioxide. And then the skin, via sweating, is also releasing water. An important function of the kidneys is to excrete ions and other components in addition to water. Which are these components? Write their letters into the boxes. So we know that urine tests can reveal several diseases, and you have to remember that urine contains several things other than excess water. So it contains salts, mainly sodium chloride, and waste materials like uric acid, carbamide, ammonia, or poisonous substances. So let's look at the options in here, and you have to choose 3 things which are actually present in the urine other than water. So in a healthy person, no proteins and no glucose should be present. Proteins are indicators of infection, and if glucose is present, it means that the person has diabetes, because all of the glucose should be reabsorbed in a healthy person. We discussed that sodium salts are present, urea is definitely present, amino acids, no, and then hormones are present. You can remember that the pregnancy tests are actually using a hormone from the urine, so that can help you to figure out the correct answers. So C, D, and F. Okay. We arrive to the last exercise. That is how it begins. The initial stages of the human embryonic development are shown in the diagram below. Which type of cell division takes place during the process? That's a big help for us that we have these images in here. We can see that from one mother cell actually 2 cells are produced, and we know that when one cell divides into 2 genetically identical daughter cells, that's the cell division, which is called mitosis. The human embryogenesis begins with the fertilization of the egg cell. Where does it take place? In the female body. This process is happening in the fallopian tube, which is also called the oviduct. So I just write B in here. Sorry. Following implantation, pregnancy can be detected by pregnancy tests within a few days. Describe the essence of this test, what can be detected and from where. Alright, so pregnancy tests are using urine in order to detect the human chorionic gonadotrophin hormone, which is also called HCG hormone. So urine can be used to detect the presence of the HCG hormone. In which of the following cases can an Rh-positive child be born? Before we start to do this exercise, let's clarify it one more time. So if you are Rh negative, it means that you are homozygous recessive. If you have Rh positive blood, then you are either heterozygous or homozygous dominant for the trait. Knowing this, we can easily conclude that in case of an Rh positive mother and an Rh positive father, it is possible to have an Rh positive child. In case of an Rh positive mother and an Rh negative father, it is also possible. And we know that these are the good answers. If you look at the rest, Rh negative mother, Rh positive father, or after the second pregnancy, this has an important role when we are talking about Rh incompatibility. In case of Rh positive mother, Rh negative father, but only after the second pregnancy. Obviously, no. In case of an Rh negative mother and an Rh negative father, it is impossible. In which case, Rh incompatibility can typically occur. Okay, so Rh compatibility is a condition when the mom is Rh negative, but the baby is Rh positive, and typically it is not a problem in case of the first pregnancy, but during labor, the baby's blood can get mixed with the mom's blood, and the female's body can consider the baby's blood as a foreign substance, and therefore antibodies can be produced against the Rh positive blood. And this can be problematic for the second baby, okay? So in case of the second pregnancy. So that's what we need to answer in here somehow. In case of an Rh negative mother and an Rh positive fetus during the first pregnancy, we discussed that it is affecting the second baby. In case of an Rh negative mother and an Rh positive fetus during the second pregnancy, this is the good answer. In case of an Rh positive mother, no. In case of an Rh positive mother, Rh negative during, no. In any case in which the genes of the mother and the father are not compatible. Okay. Which organ prevents the mixing of the fetal and the maternal red blood cells? That's the placenta. Which organ helps the oxygenated blood get back into the fetus? Umbilical cord. And the leaking of the amniotic fluid is usually the sign of the beginning of labor. What encloses the amniotic fluid during fetal life? That is the embryonic membrane. Alright, so thank you very much for your attention. I hope it was helpful. Should you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email, and all the best.